Okay, so you found mold in your home. That sinking feeling, right? But here's the thing. Seeing the mold is just the beginning. It's really the start of a little mystery. And in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly how a real pro solves that mystery. It's about so much more than just pointing at a damp patch and calling it a day.
Yeah, this quote absolutely nails it. Look, anyone can confirm what you already know. Yep, that's mold. But a real professional, their job is to be a detective. They're there to figure out the why. Why is it there? And then they give you the roadmap to make sure it's gone for good.
So how do they actually solve this mystery? Well, it's definitely not guesswork or a quick peek. It's a proper, systematic investigation. It's all about gathering clues. So let's pull back the curtain and see what that detective work really involves. Okay, so we're talking about becoming a real mold detective here. The big idea is what's called an evidence-led framework. And no, that's not just some fancy jargon. It's a totally different way of thinking. You're not just looking at a problem, you're investigating the entire system of your house, almost like a forensic scientist. And this really shows you the difference, right? On one side, you've got the superficial check. That's just pointing at the mold. On the other side, you have a proper, evidence-led investigation. This is where you're building a real case file. You're connecting all the dots to figure out exactly why the mold decided to set up shop right there. So to build that case file, a pro follows a really clear 6-step investigation. This isn't just made up on the spot, it's a structured process, and it's designed to make sure not a single clue gets missed. And here they are. These 6 steps are basically the backbone of the whole thing. You've got the history, the internal and external inspections, a moisture assessment, a ventilation assessment, and finally risk framing. Each one of these builds on the one before it, creating a complete picture. All right, step 1, history and occupancy. This is so important. Before an inspector even looks at a single wall, they need to hear the story of the home. They're going to ask you questions like, how do you guys live here? What's your heating routine? Do you open the windows? Any leaks lately? All these little details, they're the very first clues. Okay, next up, the internal inspection. You can think of this as analyzing the crime scene. The inspector isn't just glancing at the mold. They're studying its patterns. How is it spreading? What kind of materials is it growing on? Every little thing tells them something important. And then the investigation moves outside. We all know moisture is mold's #1 accomplice, so the detective has to find out how it's getting in. They're on the hunt, checking everything. Gutters, the state of the brickwork, any cracks, the flashing on the roof, basically any weak spot where water could be sneaking inside. So during the inspection, you might see them pull out a moisture meter and get a reading. Let's say it's 18%. Okay, but what does that even mean? Honestly, on its own, it means almost nothing. And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? A number without context is just a number. It's totally meaningless. A real pro knows that. The job isn't just to find a number, it's to understand the story that number is part of. And that's why they do something called moisture mapping. Instead of just one reading, they take a bunch of them all over a surface. They're literally creating a map of the moisture. And that map, that tells the whole story. It shows where the moisture is coming from and where it's going. Suddenly, that one useless number becomes part of a super powerful diagnostic tool. All right, step 5 is all about ventilation. Because it's not just about water getting in, right? It's also about getting moisture out. So the inspector needs to see how well the house can breathe. They'll be checking your bathroom fans, your kitchen extractor, little vents, anything and everything that could be trapping damp, steamy air inside. And finally, after all the evidence is gathered, we get to the last step, risk framing. This is where it all comes together. The inspector puts all the clues together to figure out, okay, how likely is this to happen again? What's the risk of more damage? And from there, they create a clear, prioritized action plan. This is the so what do we do now part. Okay, so the detective work is complete. The case has been investigated. But all that amazing work is only as good as the final report. So let's talk about what makes a great report actually useful versus just another piece of paper. So, what should you look for? Well, a really great report is going to have a few key things. First, clear photos that show you exactly what they're talking about. Second, every single finding has to be tied directly to the evidence they found, no wild guesses. It also has to give you practical, prioritized recommendations. You need to know what to fix first, second, and third. And finally, a good report is honest about its limitations. Because at the end of the day, this whole process isn't just about getting information. It's about getting a definitive action plan. A plan that's based on actual evidence so you can get a solution that's going to last. And let's finish with this, because it's so important. A good evidence-led report does so much more than just point out the mold. It gets rid of the guesswork for the people who have to fix it. It stops arguments about what actually needs to be done. And maybe most importantly for you, it saves you a ton of time, money, and stress, because you won't be dealing with the same problem all over again in 6 months.
So, the next time you're staring at a mold problem, just ask yourself this: is your solution going to be based on a guess, or is it going to be based on evidence? Are you just hiring someone to point, or are you hiring a detective to actually solve the case?